Hey guys, thank you so much for joining us at Buffalo Startup Week. We are joined by Jonathan Gorsica. He is a co-founder and partner at Helm with 15 years of UX experience. He is also has founded another company called Mentor Deck, which helps organize your mentor relationships. Thank you so much, Jonathan. And if you want to start presenting, I will hide my screen and disappear now.
Wonderful, Brendan. Thanks for having me. Super excited to be here at Startup Week, and really just encouraging entrepreneurs, whether they're designers or engineers, product people, whomever, to really push your ideas and businesses forward. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. Like Brendan said, I've been working in design for over 15 years. And I've had the luxury of working at companies big and small, both early stage companies that are kind of idea stage, as well as kind of larger corporates who are looking to maybe innovate. And so I want to talk to you all a little bit about maximizing your impact as a designer, and really whether you have the formal title or not, everybody is a designer. So hopefully you can take away some things from this talk and employ them at your organization and startup. So again, a little bit about myself. I've been working in the industry for a number of years. Most actively, I'm running a product design studio called Helm, where we're building digital products like mobile applications, web applications, prototypes, UX and UI for companies big and small. Again, I've had the luxury of working at wonderful places like Campus Labs and working with great brands that you see here. So let's get into the thick of it, right? What does it mean to have an impact as a designer? Well, first and foremost, it's all about what phase are you working in? What size of the company? What size of the product? You might be the only designer at your organization. You probably are. If you are a startup, you're going to be wearing many hats. So you really want to focus your energies towards the right places, right? And so when you're starting off, right, the product might not even exist. You might have a sketch, you might just have an idea, and you're looking to bring that stuff to life. And this is really exciting, because you as a designer can shape these concepts and really bring them to life. Someone might come to you who might be a non-technical founder, and you get to really create something with the ideas that you extract from this founder's head. This is great, right? You're simply planting seeds and bringing these ideas to life to share it. One of the things that I encourage you to do as that designer is really start asking why, right? And I know this is sometimes the annoying thing that a young kid will do, keep asking why over and over and over. But ultimately, you're getting down to the root of the problem, right? You don't simply want to take a request and put your head down and go do it. You really want to understand why you're doing the work, and understanding the intent behind the work that you're going to do. So you should start to focus around, what the problem is that you're solving. This means getting close to the users. I have, pictures of all these faces, because those are the people that matter. Those are the people that you're serving. You're not just doing design, you're actually serving people through the things that you're making. So you really want to understand the problem that you're working on. Really, why do people need this? You can figure that out through prospect customers if you don't have any customers yet, and really getting down to their current behaviors. So you'll then take that why, or the answers to the whys that you come with, and start to shape up a user persona, right? Your company may or may not have these already, but these personas, these user personas, are really stereotypes that allow you to keep this person front of mind when you're creating something. They become artifacts that you can align with the rest of your team to say, this is who we're aiming to serve. It's really a fictional representation of who your ideal customer is. You have to imagine this person, you have to talk to a number of people, a number of prospects, and then create kind of the stereotype or generalization into this user persona. You might have more than one persona, or you might be focused on one. Aim for a smaller amount. You don't want to go too wide here. And what this is really great, you could print these out or have them in a file to regularly share with your team. But you can, when you're asking or talking about a problem, when you're thinking about a solution, you can always reference these personas to say, is this going to solve Jill Anderson's need? Right? Is this the type of person that would enjoy this feature? Is there any way to delight this type of person? It's a great artifact to follow if you don't have one. The next thing as a designer is really crafting that vision, right? And with that vision, you have to acknowledge your assumptions about the vision. When you're bringing a product to life and designing something, you have to realize that as you create an interface, right, as you create the solution to the problem, you're making assumptions that this will solve the problem. So just acknowledge those right away, that you don't know for sure if this solution, if this interface is going to solve the problem. This will help you identify the risk, right? Are you making massive assumptions that this is what the person wants to do, or have you narrowed those down by talking to people and maybe showing them prototypes? Deciding on successes, right? As a designer, again, you want to kind of hypothesize and define what it means to be success, right? Is this completing a workflow, or really doing a specific task within your product? You want to think about that first and foremost, so that at the end of it, once your product is released, you're not backpedaling and deciding. And you can start to map out those potential solutions and write user stories and get into that technical stuff. But you're really shaping what that vision is. So what does it mean to like define success, right? You need to think about what are the behavioral outcomes. Again, when you create an interface and release it in a product to the world, you're really trying to change people's behaviors, right? You're trying to get someone to click something, visit, engage with your product, and ultimately extract value from it. So keep that in mind. That is, you are trying to change behaviors as a designer. If you lose sight of that, right, you're not going to have an impact. Creating designs and giving them to an engineer, working with an engineering team, isn't what you're after. You're trying to change someone's behaviors. And ultimately, that's going to affect your end user, and it's also going to affect the company. And that's really the next thing. You should understand which business metrics, which company KPIs matter to the business, so that you can start to affect them, right? This is the operational change that design can really have influence on after the fact. Many people think design is strictly a visual stripe at the end, make it pretty, push it out the door. That's not how you're going to have the biggest impact as a designer. You need to understand what the business cares about, what your end users care about, and how you can make those things intersect in a really tasteful solution. Again, this also points to quantifying your product metrics, right? You just don't want to do design. You want to understand, how many times a person needs to click X. Are they converting through these kind of workflows or funnels? And use math, right? Use a dashboard that has numbers, because that's hard to debate when you show someone converting. Okay, I'm throwing a lot at you, so again, don't hesitate to throw questions into the chat here, and I'm happy to answer. Let's get into some of the practices, again, as a designer, and how you can have that impact, right? So I say practice because it's all about doing things over and over and over again until you get good at it. Writing, it's a huge skill, obviously, but that people don't think about in design, in product. You really want to get good at explaining your ideas and understanding what your intent is. This is through user stories and other forms of writing. Obviously, there are many ceremonies and habits, stand-ups, planning strategies, et cetera, et cetera. You're going to have software tooling. There's many of them, Figma, XD, Sketch. Those are some leaders in the tooling. And helping define that MVP, right? Typically, the designer is going to work very closely with that product person to help iterate on the idea and bring it to life to really shape the scope of what that MVP is, that minimal viable product. And then mapping, right? I think this is another kind of underserved exercise or practice of a designer that has an incredible impact. And the short of it is you're really helping people think about a process. And it's as simple as that. So an example that I have for you today is something that was done early on in a company, and we were basically mapping the user activities across specific verticals, right? Like, so whether they're getting started or managing their setting or creating an auction, we were able to plot those out on a horizontal timeline and then map below that the features that would lead up to it. And ultimately, those yellow Post-its would get prioritized so that you would see the most important things first, the things that you must deliver in order to create a valuable experience and a valuable product, and everything else below that kind of fall to the wayside and come in future releases. So again, use mapping and story mapping, user story mapping when you're talking about features to really help prioritize and organize your company. Okay, so now you have this like MVP out, right? And your company's growing, right? And you need to actually find product market fit. A lot of you might have seen this this little illustration. I think Spotify put it out, but it's ultimately about reducing risk and not building something that is too complex for what people need today. It also ties back to some of the things that we've already talked about, which is understanding the why and understanding what your users want to get out of it, right? So in this example, right, what the user actually wants to do is get from point A to B faster than walking, right? So if you think to yourself, well, we need to build a car and start off building a wheel, and then you put two wheels together with an axle and then the body and then ultimately a steering wheel, like that example in the top row, they're not going to have that any value delivered to the very end, right? And this might take, a month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever, right? Now, if you start to think about, well, we just need to get someone from A to B faster, you could build them a skateboard first, and then you could put a handle on that skateboard and give them a scooter and evolve the product in a way that even version 1 provides value by getting from A to B faster. So this was one that kind of came out a handful of years ago and really stuck with me as a way to think in this lean kind of iterative way that reduces risk. It means building something of value and putting it out sooner and not waiting months and months and sometimes years to build this massive product, push it off a cliff and hope it flies. So stay minimal. Okay, the next thing is really around creating hypotheses. Again, it's acknowledging that you have assumptions about the product, right? And so by framing up hypotheses in this structured sentence, you could deliver them better. You could discuss them objectively with the team, and you could weigh whether or not you want to go after those potential solutions. And in this case, the structure of the sentence is, we believe potential outcome will be achieved if user type, right? You could use your personas there, attains a benefit, right? Whatever that potential metric is or outcome with the feature, right? And then that's the specific feature you're delivering. So an example is, we believe less time will be spent shopping if the buyer attains, buying confidence with a more robust photo gallery of a product, right? That's an example, but again, acknowledge these hypotheses, write them down, and use them to have discussions within your organization. Ultimately, you're trying to find product market fit, right? Where the market thinks your product is valuable enough that they use it and pay for it in one way or another. So again, find that happy path, that single workflow that provides value to someone and aim to deliver that. Don't really think about optimizing yet. You really just want to focus on delivering that value. Stay close to your customers, collect data along the way, and get ready to kind of identify friction and opportunities in those paths. Okay, so we're taking this evolution, right? We started early stage, idea stage, and now we're finding fit. We're starting to map certain ideas. We talked a little bit previously about that rough user journey map where you're seeing the stages across the top. You have the specifics up on the y-axis with the insights along the way, and then any takeaways or notes. And I'll show you here on this next slide. Here's like a very in-depth kind of customer journey or user story map where they have these stages where a person is kind of researching and shopping and then booking this travel, and it moves to the right all across the top there. Specifically below, you can see what they're doing at each of those stages and what they're thinking, feeling, what they're experiencing. And then you're looking at this as a designer and the product team, and you're saying, hey, where are there opportunities here? Where is there friction that we can kind of smooth over? So again, this is very complex and takes a lot of detailed thinking and puts it into a single artifact that can be shared with stakeholders, the broader team, etc. This next version, right, is really a simple way to do it, right? You have your stages across the top, right? And then your specifics that you're going to identify. And you're essentially trying to fill those things out as you go, right? So, what are someone's goals in the top left? What are someone's goals during the research stage versus if they're in the booking stage? They're thinking differently. So you really want to think differently and think specifically about that moment, right? What is someone thinking when they're booking versus when they're post booking or post travel. You get to identify challenges and opportunities in each one of these. And these are really where a lot of design insights come from when you think specifically about the user customer journey. Okay, throwing a lot at you again, throw questions in the chat. Please Google, go deep down each one of these as you see fit. I'm going to keep moving. Okay, a big part of being a designer is really understanding the difference between these two mindsets, right? I remember as an early designer in my career, I felt like I knew it, right? And there was this like ego in the way of getting to a better solution. And as I progressed through my career, I understood that I don't know anything for the most part. And I know that I need to go and learn. And that's the difference between a fixed and a growth mindset, right? Someone who has a fixed mindset believes that they cannot learn and things will always be the way they are and you can't change something in front of you, right? So you tend to avoid what's uncomfortable. You take feedback very personally, right? And you think that any kind of effort towards changes is just futile and it's not going to result in any difference, right? Then on the other side, you have a growth mindset, which means you embrace challenge, you embrace feedback, right? You persist knowing that you will overcome regardless, and you're ultimately learning from that criticism. So as a designer, to have an impact, you really need to put yourself into that growth mindset and help everybody around you understand that they should be in this space where feedback and challenges are actually opportunities in front of you. And this is one of the biggest things that'll help you have an impact as a designer in your organization. So again, we're telling the story of how you have an impact over the course of a product lifecycle, right? This one is very, very, very important as you put things into the market. You need to build in learning, right? You need to collect data now so you can make better decisions later, better hypotheses on your next design decisions later. So please build in the tools. There's very simple tooling that Google will allow. You might have to do some specific event tracking. There's also things like look back, and there's a lot of product tools, mix panel, heap, segment, their amplitude. There's a number of things, but build in that learning, collect it, and now parse through it later, even if it's messy. Okay, your product's now growing. Now you're getting traction. Fantastic. Okay, we went from starting an idea down to like finding that product market fit, and now you're actually starting to grow and get traction. So again, we look at things like a map, right? You can now step out and up and look at the business at a higher level, right? When how are your users finding your application, right? How are they learning about the value of it? How are they then using it? We went through some of those maps. And then what are their ultimate goals? So again, you have this XY axis where you can take a look at the business at a high level and start to understand what matters and what stakeholders care about and what your end users care about. Just checking some chats. Okay, cool. Hey, everybody. And then, okay, the next is finding that balance. So now you're getting traction, right? You have existing users using your product that you designed. You might also have new users who have different needs. So you really need to get into that data and understand it. You need to understand how your marketing team is selling a product versus, what the product design engineering PMs are aiming to build, and you need to align them. Design acts as a bridge here that helps you facilitate and align the organization. And again, you're assessing opportunity. So through some of that mapping, through the data that you're collecting, you're able to find insight and really drive the direction on the product. Again, everything that I'm talking about is not really a visual exercise. Oftentimes, design is strictly that visual, make the UI pretty, and we'll put it out into the world. You're going to have a much bigger impact when you start thinking about design as structured thought and alignment, building that bridge, being a facilitator. That's where you're going to have the most impact as a designer in the world today. Certainly at an early stage company where the team is small, you can have an incredible impact. The next section is really around negotiation and priority. I love the word negotiation because I feel like it's a huge part of what we do as designers and product people. We're constantly understanding, hey, if I'm selling you, or if I make up this design and I share it with an engineer, they might say, hey, that's going to take 4 to 6 weeks. But if you work with that engineer and talk about how to reduce that and make something simpler, you might get something out in a 2-week cycle, out into production, out live. So that negotiation of effort and then that potential impact is great. You should constantly be negotiating and working with your team in order to understand what can be most effective and what those trade-offs and levers you have to pull in order to make that effective thing. This also comes into feature prioritization with your product owners, right? You could start to bring solutions to the problems that they're presenting to you, and depending on what those are, that'll affect the backlog priority. Obviously, team building and discussion. Us as designers, we have this incredible superpower. Someone could tell us an idea, we can sketch, make something on our computer and come back and say, is this what you thought? And then we could all have a discussion around that artifact that you built. So use that superpower, right? Create the artifact and have a discussion. Oftentimes, if you're just talking about the written word or you're verbally discussing ideas, a lot gets lost because we have, this lens we're looking through. So make the artifact, talk about it. And again, this is going to fuel cross-organization collaboration between marketing, product, engineering, etc. Be the bridge. Be the bridge. Okay, then you're paying debts, right? So again, the product is growing and you understand, hey, we pushed some things out that were maybe complex or weren't ideal. Now you've made concessions along the way, right? Whether it's engineering debts or even design debts, right? Understand that when you push something out into the world, those concessions might make the user experience slow. It might not be, the technology might not be fast. Well, you really need to interrogate that and all own that there's these debts that you have to pay down. So you're understanding more now about your products, your end users. You understand what the primary workflows are that people care about. You're really addressing all those different workflows and giving them priority, and then ultimately aligning that stuff to your organization. But paying down those debts and acknowledging them is key to having an impact as a designer in your organization. As a designer, you're going to want to be thinking in systems and encouraging everybody to think in systems. The way I like to explain this is like Lego, right? At some point, if you have a component or a design system that is like Lego, you can piece together interface elements in a much more efficient way than if you had to create every little block every little time. So really think in systems. This can be visual systems. These things can be turned into, front end components that can be deployed programmatically, toggled on and off with feature flags. Think in those units and those components, and it's going to allow your product to scale with ease. So that if you have to make a new view, say you have to make an account setting screen, are you designing the text input again from scratch? No, you're probably going to reuse it for maybe a text input elsewhere. So again, think in systems, encourage your teams to think in systems so that you can scale with greater ease. Okay. Again, now you have traction. You're thinking about what does it mean to retain our customers. Some of them started using our product, but some might be leaving. So we really need to dive into the data on what they're doing and what they're not. Perhaps you had assumptions. You put 10 features out into the world, and now you could look and say, wow, only 3 to 4 of these features are getting 80% of the usage, right? You might want to focus around that. The data, the usage data that you were collecting earlier on is now, paying itself back by giving you insight into what matters to your current users. You're talking to your users. You're out there, doing usability testing. You're having surveys. You're staying close to them. And this really allows you to make better decisions on how to retain them. Customer interviews, ultimately face your fears, right? As an early stage company, you have all these assumptions and all this risk to go to market. And if you push these things out into the world, some people don't like to hear the bad feedback, but that's where it's at. You want to hear the hard stuff so that you can go fix it. A lot of people have a tendency to only talk to the people who are using their product. That's also a misstep. You actually want to talk to people that looked at your product and said no to it, or used your product and left. Those are the people who are going to show you kind of what you're doing wrong, and that'll allow you to prove it. So again, face those fears, have that growth mindset, and move on to kind of solve those problems. All right, so your product's growing, it's growing right. you've hit scale, right? Or you're able to scale at this point. You're thinking in systems, you're close to your users, you have your maps out, your challenges and your opportunities are out in front of you, you're aligned to business metrics, and you're ultimately delivering great products to the world that people want. Okay, so you might be more involved in kind of product operations, right? Understanding the speed and the efficiency of the team, whether that's testing, better understanding the peaks and valleys of your product. But again, design is the bridge. You need to be in product as well as you are in engineering, and you could also help marketing, et cetera. There's probably more specialization happening now as the product is hitting scale, right? So as a designer, you should just be aware of this. You might have worn all the hats, right? You're an interaction designer, a graphic designer, the UX designer. You did all this stuff early stage in the company, but now as you hit this, you're going to have more specialization, right? You're going to have people around you that might be specific UX researchers. You might have motion designers, et cetera, et cetera. Work with them. Again, be the bridge. And also stay close to those customers. As the company grows, you tend to get in this weird realm where you're not necessarily as close to the customers as you might have been. You need to fight against that. Oftentimes people do that by playing customer support, essentially, right? Talk to them, hear their problems, understand why they're frustrated, be friendly with them, and have those customers be honest with you. Get access to those bugs and those tickets that people are complaining about, and ultimately run those usability tests so that you can understand where there's problems, where there's more opportunity. Okay, again, I've given a lot, right? Here's a quick recap of everything that we went down today. I can't believe this is under 25 minutes because each one of these slides you can go super deep on. I'm always available for questions, but again, you look at your what you're doing as a designer to have an impact. First and foremost, you need to understand what stage the company is at, what stage the product is at, and then where to place your efforts within. So again, when you're just starting off, you're planting seeds, right? You have to really understand the problem and the vision and how to make all that stuff work together so that seed turns into that giant oak tree in a few years, right? The next is you're finding that product market fit. You're acknowledging those assumptions. You're making the hypotheses and helping understand priority. You're doing a lot of those mapping exercises, both at different lenses from a company level as well as a product level. You're then getting traction as the product. So you really have to find the balance between new and existing users. You're starting to pay down those debts, right? And acknowledging all of those. And you're really thinking about systems. Excuse my phone here. I do not need a car warranty. Okay, so then you have scale, right? So again, you're thinking more about product operations, design ops. How are you working as a design team so that you can have the biggest impact on the business? Okay, and then data and analytics. It's a designer's best friend. We're completely past the age of design as just this visual subjective thing. Great designers work with the data that they have, they make hypotheses on that data, and then they aim to affect those metrics. So keep it quantified, and then stay close to your customers, right? Don't forget who you serve, designers. At the end of the day, you need to break through everything and get to your customers, support them, understand them, get in their mind, and be an advocate for the customer in your organization, whether that organization is a 2-person founding team or a 350-person org. Be the advocate for the user. So otherwise, please reach out, say hello. My name is Jonathan Gorsica. Again, if you scan that, I think it goes to my LinkedIn. Hit me up on Twitter, Instagram, say hello. I'm always down to geek out and talk design with you all. So again, thanks for having me, everybody. I'm here to answer questions too.
Jonathan, that was very impressive. Very, very informational. I would just kind of like to start off maybe with the persona part. What do you look for when you are building a persona, and why do you look for that?
Yeah, sure. So, I really think about kind of three parts to it, right? I think about kind of demographics, right? Like generally, what type of person this is, Are they a 30 something? Are they 70? Right? What are their abilities? And then I think about geographics, right? Is there anything, where are they located, and how does that affect how they use things? And then psychographics. I think that is maybe the most important thing, is like, what mindset are they in when they're using something? What do they care about? What do they aim to achieve? Those three things are really important when shaping up a user persona.
That's super interesting. I'm very curious, and I'll probably actually ask you off screen about how you get into the personality and the motivations. So that was super interesting. Remember, guys, I can ask Jonathan a ton of questions. You guys feel free to write something in the chat or just raise your hand, and I can allow you to talk. You know, is it Scott, Kelly, Madonna? Does anybody have any questions?
You could tell me to like shorten the topic. There's so much information in this. I was just ripping through it. It's been under a half an hour.
I could, there we go. First question from Scott. When designing for multiple devices, do you start mobile first or desktop?
Yeah, great question. Hey, Scott. So multiple devices, yes. I mean, the short answer is yes, start mobile first, because you want to start with the constraint, right? On a mobile device, you're literally constrained with the amount of pixels you have. So it forces prioritization, right? Let me rephrase. When you're given a mobile device, you have to decide what is priority. When you're given a desktop, people tend to just throw it all in there because you have the space on the screen. So I like to start mobile first. It forces those top three things that a user must do. And from there, you just scale up, right? So when you go to a desktop, when you go to a tablet, you have more room to display these things, but you made sure that your top three or your top even one user interaction is on the screen for that person. So I love mobile first because it forces that priority.
Awesome. Also, another question, you emphasized writing pretty heavily in your presentation. What did you do to get better at copy and to better, hit those pain points and really articulate yourself to your clients?
Oh, yeah. Great question. So it's funny because in our world today, writing has become part of how we talk, right? With Slack, texts, like, some of you might remember not having text and going, why would I ever text someone if I can just call them? But now it's just like such a thing. So I think whether it's an email, whether it's a user story, whether it's UX micro copy, how you explain your ideas to someone is everything, right? If I choose the wrong words, you might be misconstrued. And that idea that may be valuable if you articulated it properly might not make it through to your product. So it's really about clarifying thought, right? Taking your ideas and clarifying it by writing it, saying this one word doesn't work, I'm going to rewrite it, and you're really practicing how you communicate. And that's really what design is about. It's about proper communication and refining the words and the things that you explain to people, your ideas.
Scott has another question. And thank you for that answer. I definitely find myself on one of those copy journeys where I'm learning to write better and better every day. Also love the growth mindset part. But Scott's question is, what are your thoughts on design or UX for interfaces that aren't visual, like voice or other means?
I think that the short answer is I love it, right? So this idea that we have to interact with an interface in order to get the information or get the value out of something is in a way short-sighted. It's a limiter, right? And the way I'll explain this is, if you have any question in the world, you pick up your phone or your computer and you start typing the question, right? How do I make lasagna? Right? And I'm limited by how fast my thumbs can move to get that question out and then get that answer back, right? So that limitation is simply because there's an interface in a way. If I could speak it, hey Google, how do I make a lasagna? Or hey Siri, how do I make a lasagna? and it gives me it back. I can get it much faster. So the considerations of how we interact with technology via voice or otherwise is just as important. You're very aware of the user, you're aware of what they care about, and you're thinking about that intimately. You're thinking about, what does this person want? They don't want to type something in. And I'm going to say that again. They don't want to type something in. That's more work for them to do. So if you understand their intent, what they want, thinking about interfaceless interactions is really kind of special, because you're removing a whole layer. It's actually a burden. And I work in this industry, right? Like, typing something into Google is a burden. It's a limiter, even though it's quite powerful. And again, I'll exaggerate. Imagine if all I had to do was think of a question. How do I make lasagna? How do I learn karate? How do I get into the matrix faster? Right? The limitations now removed. Right? You have a much deeper connection to a much faster connection to the technology, to what you really want, which is a lasagna in my belly right away. Thanks, Scott. I hope everybody's hungry after that.
These are great questions. Another point I wanted to ask about was the vision. How do you make sure that you're on the same page with somebody else when it comes down to vision?
Yeah, this is a challenge, because it's so much of it's subjective, but it's about what you value, right? So what are your values? Those are the things that really will assure everybody will ultimately be down the same path, right? So vision changes, right? In a way, as it should. You should have the agility to say, like, okay, I wish for this to happen in 12 months, and you learn something 6 months into that path. And because you have that growth mindset, you're not afraid of making that change. You then, change your vision. But this is why the values matter maybe more than vision. You need to assure that people value the same thing on the team, right? Like being close to your customer, like having a growth mindset. Those are the things that maybe matter more than vision into reaching the goal. So if the values are aligned, you can change along the way, because you all share that. This is why we pick co-founding teams. This is why we pick our partners in life, usually because we share the same values. See how I flipped that? It went from vision to values, but I'm a firm believer.
I definitely appreciate it. I think strong values are great, anchor to stay attached to. Does anybody else have any other questions? Otherwise, I can ask Jonathan 1,000 questions today. So give it a little more time. Jonathan,
Yeah,
what's really your favorite part of the UX process?
I love getting to know different businesses. That is what keeps me going. I think it's so fascinating to really dive in and understand how different businesses work, and then how technology enables those businesses to work. And again, there's this common misconception that design is just this visual thing, right? But I think what excites the design community in general is getting to understand the business, getting to understand the specifics about how someone should interact in order to deliver value, right? That is really fun, and I'll share a story. Like early on in a company, we were trying to understand how they would transact tens of thousands of dollars in like one interaction, right? And we said, wow, this is high risk, right? If they accidentally slip and press the button, that's, 20 grand, that's like being committed to this thing. And we had to design an interaction that allowed them to back out of it quickly, but still, put up money very quickly. And so we designed kind of this hold interaction that took like 3 or 4 seconds for it to complete. And then it would like pop and actually submit, $10,000, $20,000. And that was really fun, and especially because we had this really unique case that was high risk, right? We didn't want anybody just putting 10, 20 G's through this thing without their intent. But we still had to allow them to do that quickly and in kind of a rapid environment. So really understanding that problem, understanding the users, and also understanding what the business did not want, and did not want. It was fun to then come up with a very specific interaction design to it to solve that problem.
That's super cool. I definitely enjoy also being in a service business where you get to see these different business models, beautiful ideas, and then really help people communicate that. Kelly is asking us another question. How can you qualify a client quicker and/or get to the point where you are selective about who you work with?
Yeah, great question. I'm a huge fan of like asking the hard questions right out of the gate, right? So like, the age-old question, like what keeps you up at night? What concerns you about working with me or working with this type of company or whatever it might be? You basically want to like derobe them right away. Everybody likes to be like the smiley client, like, oh, this is gonna be great and it's gonna be easy. Well, every successful product that I've worked on is usually there's friction, right? There's hard times. You're kind of in the trenches. The seas sometimes get too wavy and the storm is coming. So I like to ask those questions right out of the gate, right? What are you afraid of, right? What are your biggest risks? Use the growth fixed mindset as a gauge too, as kind of a little bit of a litmus test. Like ask them what are your biggest assumptions. And if they come across like they know it all, the flag is up, right? Like you don't know it all. Like you might be an industry expert and have a lot of good expertise. That's great, right? But if you are so sure in yourself that you really know it all and this is gonna be a smash hit, you're dealing with someone who might not have a full grasp on what they're getting into. So I like to use that as kind of my finger to the wind. How honest are they going to be with me? Are they going to be able to open up and say like, this is actually a challenge of ours, right? And we'll like work at that together. Or do they kind of like, beat their chest and say, no, I know it all. And this will all be great. So ask those hard questions and see if they're honest with you, right? This is in a way to Brandon's questions, like, do they align to that honesty, right? Do they align to the values that you value, so that regardless of what happens, feature change, whatever in the product, you're aligned to the same values and you'll get through it together. I like that question a lot.
Do you guys have any other questions? Again, I am completely comfortable filling up the time. I do want to make space for other people to ask questions though. So we'll take it a step back. Jonathan, with that skateboarding situation, it was really cool. I really enjoyed like the depiction of, understanding what people really want. Do you have like, what does your discovery process look like?
Yeah. So I would say let's like a formal discovery process, right? I think there's a few things. There's understanding what the business wants to achieve, and this is usually done through multiple workshops to understand what is the business's intent, right? What are they trying to achieve in the world? What value are they trying to deliver in the world? What else exists around value in the world? And then really, what are those things that make you different? Again, some of that is value discovery. Again, I don't mean value of the product, but I mean value with that founder. It's also value discovery of what is the potential value of the things that we're creating, right? Does this exist everywhere where there's tons of options, or is there something truly kind of novel and unique here? So again, workshops, and then it's prospecting, right? So understanding what prospect customers care about. Again, you need to be close to them. The things that usually go up in flames are the people who never talk to customers. They make all the assumptions in the world, and then they want to spend 6-8 months before they show the customer something. And then ultimately they do that, they show it to the customer, and the customer doesn't care for it at all, right? So it's all about talking to those prospect customers, people in your persona's demographic, to ask them a lot of questions. This could be interviews, this could be surveys, this could be asking them about maybe competitive products that they use and why. but a lot of it is around getting to the bottom of what they really care about. Very, very common problem in the software industry is that people will just chase other competitors because they think the competitors are what the people want. It's dangerous because they might want that, but you're losing all opportunity to kind of completely jump over them and find something new. So that's all about getting closer to your customers and maybe understanding their intent, their root problem, that why, until you get down to that thing that they really care about. An example is the lasagna, which is I don't, as someone using the internet, I don't want to have to type something in. I don't even want the lasagna recipe. I want the lasagna hot on my plate in front of me now. And it's that awareness as a designer that you should have that's ultimately going to get you to value delivery faster. And that's what this image is about. It's about value delivery faster and reducing risk, right? If I give you a skateboard, if you care about getting from A to B faster than walking, and I give you a skateboard, you'll get there maybe 30 seconds faster, a minute faster, right? Now you have the scooter, you'd be okay, 2 minutes faster, right? A bike, 10 minutes faster, right? And all of a sudden you're there in 5 minutes to get a car. But you've not waited 6 months, a year, whatever crazy timeline to build the full vehicle before you deliver it. You gave them a skateboard first. And that's what this is about. And you don't understand that until you understand that this person just wants a hot lasagna in their face.
Definitely.
That's like a tweet, right? I got to like put that out.
That might be my LinkedIn post for tomorrow, some hot lasagna. No, this is all been very interesting. I know with what you were mentioning, talking about the growth mindset, what other ways did like UX kind of change your mindset for, when an engineer learns something, they don't look at anything the same. In your situation, like what has it affected?
As far as like the growth mindset?
Not really as much as the growth mindset, but more of like the expertise in UX where, you'll see like how a web page is designed and you're like, oh, okay, what are the key indicators that like, this was just created by a developer and they didn't put much design into it. What screams to you?
Yeah, I feel like the real answer to this is like design is just thinking about things very, very specifically, right? And so, if you pull up like a web product or a web page and you're trying to do something, let's just say like book a reservation at a restaurant, and where the book button is or whatever, where it might be, right? Like someone is thinking about that very, very specifically. And then you click the book button and maybe it asks for an input, or maybe it takes you to a new page and maybe that page looks different. Like good designers are thinking very, very specifically about how that experience makes them feel, what's confusing, how many kind of clicks are in that workflow, if the interface is moving around, or if it's presented right in front of you, it's easy to do, it's simple, and you're removing all that friction. So again, like, good UX or good design is you look at something and you say, well, what's happening? Do I have to click 10 times and it's moving around and I'm confused? Or is it very simple? And an analogy to this is really your kitchen, right? We're all designers and you just don't know it, but you put your glasses and your cups that you use multiple times a day in a spot that is easy to use because you have to reach it multiple times a day. It's the same thing as about putting a book button or, in a proper place, right? We're designing our kitchen based on frequency of use, right? And you're not going to put your water glasses like way off where you need a step stool to use, right? Because it would be a shitty user experience to get a step stool out to get a glass of water every day. So that is design kind of in a nutshell. And we're all designers in that way, the way we create our environments in our home. And that's Madonna, that's a great podcast name. I feel like it's, we need to get hotlasagna.io and we are set.
The new hottest SaaS product. Definitely fun stuff.
As a kid who grew up watching Garfield, I think we will have to get that done.
Yeah. So Jonathan, again, like all of this has been super, super helpful. I know I'm going to want to pick your brain a little bit more with this. Thanks everybody for participating, for showing up. Jonathan, again, thank you so much for this. This has been beneficial to not only designers, but somebody in the media space. I know we have more persona conversations to come and more user experience conversations to come. So with that being said, I want to let everybody know that Buffalo Startup Week will be having our last networking event this Friday. It's at the Port. Madonna, actually, I'm going to let you do this part. Let's do this. That's unmute.
It's called Pour Tap Room, P-O-U-R. It's the former cabaret, and it is behind Shays, kind of between Shays and Dinosaur. Pour Tap Room, a lot of fun. Cool concept in bars. 5 to 7, see y'all there.
So you guys will see one of the flyers that we have prepared for it launched out. And one last time, everybody, thank you for showing up. Jonathan, this was wonderful. And we will catch you at the next event. See you guys.
Thanks, everybody.